Welcome to Adaptation, the book to movie podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Chris.
And today we are discussing Diane Wynne Jones's book, Howl's Moving Castle, and its film adaptation by Hayao Miyazaki. But before we do that, how are you, Chris? We're post April Fool's Day. Did you fall for any silly Lord of the Rings jokes online this year?
I did not this year. I will tell
Dang
you,
it.
actually, I'm glad you asked that. I forgot. Sarah, Blair's mom, sent me an Instagram post claiming that the MTA was going to start adding a luxury car to the subway system. And for $25, you'd sit there and there'd be like a little porter and an espresso machine. And I was looking at it and I was like, this is cool. That could be fun. That'd be a fun way to get to the Upper East Side. And then I had your voice in my head going, is it April Fool's? So I had to pull it up and Google it, look at the date of the post, and I was like, oh, crap, April 1st, because I didn't see it until the next day. Right. Yeah, so I did tangentially fall for another one again, but in my defense, Sarah tricked me.
Yeah, so. Sure she did.
Did you see any good ones?
No, actually, I kind of forgot it was April Fool's Day this year. It's hard to make jokes. When the world is in this state. So no, I didn't fall for anything. Anyway, though, what have you been reading lately?
I am so excited. I finally finished Musashi, all 970 pages.
Good God.
Cannot recommend it highly enough, but I know nobody I would recommend it to would read it.
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. 970 pages?
No. Yep. Delightful Edo period, 16th century, all over Japan. Nice, full plot lines. It's just Anna Karenina shifted over the border. Delightful bunch of samurai. And I'm so glad to be done with
it. Yeah, I'm sure. You can put it away and probably never pick it back up again.
Yes, that's exactly correct. What about you? What you been watching?
Still kind of slow going around here between Project Hail Mary kind of dominating things and the beginning of the year just being pretty weak. Otherwise, there just hasn't been a ton, and I've been kind of busy, so I've missed a few things. But the new one that I have seen is a new movie on Hulu called Mike and Nick and Alice, which I've
been getting all sorts of ads for that.
I think you and Blair would probably have a really good time with that movie. Yeah. It's a fun, like, gangster. I don't want to give away any of the plot, but it's a fun, funny gangster movie, and it's like a stylized action movie, so it's very kind of reminiscent of the 70s, and it's cool. It's fun.
That sounds like everything I want in a movie.
Yeah. The whole time I was thinking about the two of you, because I think everything will. I think you'll laugh, you'll cry. You probably won't cry, but you'll enjoy yourself.
You'd be surprised.
You might cry. Blair won't cry.
I think, I've been getting tons of ads for it, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah, if you've got Hulu, check it out. It's a good streaming movie. Like, it's not a masterpiece or anything, but definitely worth your time.
Who needs masterpieces in the Big 26? Just give me some lighthearted laughter and slapstick comedy. Okay, well, I'm Nate.
Yeah. But
well, speaking of masterpieces...
Yeah, there you go. Look at you, taking the reins. Speaking of, stories that are considered masterpieces, let's talk about Howl's Moving Castle. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, that's what as I made that somewhat humorous transition, I did kind of think I'm not sure where I land. Much like a number that we have discussed previously, I keep coming out of my discussion research more of a fan than I was throughout the reading, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
And this one is no exception to that, which kind of made me wonder, especially as I was writing my recommendation for this episode, what am I recommending based on? Because I don't expect anyone I recommend a book to also go and do the lengthy research that I do for our discussion.
Yeah.
So can I rightfully merit that bump in my opinion and expect that to be the case? So I've been kicking that around a little bit. So that is to say, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this one. But yes, book. So Howl's Moving Castle, published in 1986 by Diane Wynne Jones. I do love Wynne Jones. I know you have watched more recently, but are not an avid watcher of Wales rugby in particular.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
Huge figurehead in Welsh rugby, Alan Wynne Jones, just retired a couple of years ago, and I'm curious if it's just a more common what's going on with the names. I see a lot of repeated names. I mean, I know Wales is not a large nation, but
Oh yeah.
gave me a little tickle, I suppose.
Yeah, sure.
She is not Welsh though. Did end up in Wales after World War II began. She was born in London in 1934. I think it was around 5 or 6. Her family temporarily evacuated there, to be safe from the
Blitz?
Yes, the Blitz, the Blitz. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
This feels absurd and insane, especially as I started digging more deeply into Joan's career. I had not heard of her until you suggested this book.
Mm.
And I had not heard of this book until you suggested it either. Crazy, illustrious writing career. In part, I had not heard of her because the lion's share of her work is written for children. I guess I
Okay.
didn't see for sure or not. Is this considered properly a children's tale? Is it kind of accepted for everyone at this point?
I don't know. This is definitely one of the ones that we talk about that where the movie is much more famous, I think, than the book, just in
Yes.
again in 2026. And because it's an anime film, there is certainly some elements of family friendliness, and I think a lot of people attach themselves to anime at an early age. All of that is to say that I don't know because it's hard to answer that when the movie comes from an industry that is. It's like if Pixar made a movie, you're like, well, yeah, it's for
Right.
kids, but Pixar also makes movies based on like horrible legends that they turn into fun, sparkly, dancy musicals.
Right. Right. I think that's where the waters get murky here because exactly what you alluded to, Pinocchio, the
Yeah, that's a great example.
lovely, happy-go-lucky animated movie. This has come up on the podcast before. If anyone
Mm-hmm.
has gone down that little rabbit hole to read it, not
Uh-uh.
the happy-go-lucky cartoon that we grew up with.
Right.
But then we have the reverse. I think also, if I'm not mistaken, this is Studio Ghibli, correct?
Yes, correct.
So also famously blurring the lines and making these visual spectacles that everybody loves, not just children.
Yep.
So we're kind of weaving our way back and forth. Okay, I just didn't know if it was hands down one or the other. Initially, when I first started reading, my immediate thought was, am I reading a children's book? So that's interesting, but we'll get into it a little bit later.
Okay.
I wanted to give a little summation through my patented list of lists style, but
Great.
her lists are just crazy. The bibliography from this woman, spectacular. Truly, truly an illustrious
Wow.
career. I saw a few plays, like 3 to 5 plays, that could be wrong. Again, I never feel super certain about these, so I'm giving approximations.
Okay.
I believe exactly 3 books explicitly, specifically written for adults. Her first one published in 1970 about this process of the British Empire, the Commonwealth, giving back little nations, giving back, post imperialism, whatever. That book sounded incredible. I want to read that. But much, much, much more of the body of her work, dozens of short stories, YA, children's books, poetry anthologies.
Wow.
Just a crazy list.
Dang.
But her awards list, equally insane. Starting in 85, nominated for World Fantasy Award, nominated for Mythopoetic Awards many times, and that
Wow.
was primarily fantasy for children's literature. Locus Award nominations again many times. A Carl Edward Wagner Award. That one I hadn't heard of. We have, shocker, found ourselves another British author, which is crazy, the percentage of what we've covered,
I
how
know
many
it
of them are
really
British
is.
authors.
Yeah.
But then the huge one here in 2007, the World Fantasy Award for Life Achievement.
Wow.
Very illustrious author. The lists of who she both was inspired by and who her writing went on to inspire. Again, growing up in the London area, child of two teachers, attended lectures by both Tolkien and Lewis,
Wow.
and then has gone on and been cited as a figure that inspired Terry Pratchett, J.K. Rowling, Neil Gaiman. We're going to temporarily ignore that he's been canceled since, but she was actually
Both of those
friends
people
with.
have been canceled since.
I know it, but we're going to talk about the art and art, not the artist.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yes.
She was friends with Neil Gaiman. Both have books that they dedicated to each other.
Wow.
And you can definitely see the through lines here. How do I want to put it? This adherence to, but also bending and breaking of the rules. And I think along the lines of their writing and this lineage that we see in a literary sense that she came from, in order to effectively, we see this in music, we see this in visual arts, in order to effectively bend or break these rules without your stuff just being amateur drivel, you need to have a level of mastery and soundness to effectively and confidently commit those acts, right? Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And we very much see that in her writing. Like, you cannot set up the tropes of a fairy tale and then ignore them effectively without also establishing this base that it's sort of implied that it could have been a simple and fantastic fairy tale,
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Which I would argue this very much is. And I found many references to the amount of writing online about her writing of Howl's Moving Castle was incredible. I'm finding people's theses, research papers, peer-reviewed article publications of what the heck is going on in Howl's Moving Castle and why is it so brilliant.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, I was not prepared for that. I even found one. I was not able to find a copy. Very frustrating. It's effectively what we do. It's an essay that Jones herself wrote, titled "Howl's Moving Castle: Book to Film" or "Book
Oh,
Becoming
cool.
Film," along those lines.
Yeah.
Could not track down a copy of that essay because obviously every time you use any search engine and put in Diane Wynne Jones, Howl's Moving Castle, you just get information about the book itself.
Yeah.
But if I can find that essay, I'll send it to you, and whatever production magic Nate does, we'll find a way to disseminate that if people are interested. All of this writing, you do not see this research on, the hero's quest, the a classic fairy tale structure. I mean, obviously we do have that research, but it's so ingrained in Western understanding of literature and writing, of
Hmm.
storytelling. And there's a safety, indeed, it's nearly a prerequisite, I think, for truly grasping and enjoying Howl's Moving Castle.
Okay.
She doesn't explain all of this stuff right off the top. There's sort of this
Hmm.
assumed cultural knowledge, right?
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, that is what makes it so fun when she deviates.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, right off the top here, my first thought was literally, am I reading a children's book? And
Yeah.
again, I'm not convinced I wasn't, especially when you consider these very early, the Brothers Grimm, some of these maybe more culturally specific folk tales. They are not the Disney and Pixar animated films that you and I grew up with.
Right.
There's somebody eating children. There is somebody Pinocchio being encouraged to do the right thing through drastic, what we would now call child abuse measures.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she sets us up with that. And again, as readers, viewers, consumers of the Western version of these fairy tales, we can kind of immediately step in and have a good grasp of what's going on. We've got the fairy utopian society, this family that's all loving and happy. These ideas of fate versus free will are coming up a lot right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
An evil witch, a wizard that everybody's scared of, a girl cursed and turned into this old hag, and then, of course, the titular castle with the ability to rove about the countryside, which is
Mm-hmm.
perhaps our first and most blatant departure. Castles can't move. So
Right.
cool. Where are we going with this, lady? This is the only writing of hers that I have consumed personally, so I don't want to draw any sweeping generalizations on her style as a whole. But within the book, we have a few parts that I think are worth highlighting. I say this because at first blush, it was not apparent to me why this particular tale would be chosen to be turned into a movie, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Sure.
We have thousands of folk oral tradition tales, characters, what have you. Why suddenly is this one being selected? Especially as you said, I would completely agree. I think the movie is far more widely known than the book.
Yep. At least these days.
Yeah, yeah. Now I am speaking, of course, in our context, but
Right.
it perhaps just because it is a conversation that you and I have often, and obviously I knew we'd be recording this, so I have a different lens that I'm looking at it. But this is to say it's very stock and standard at the start. Okay.
Sure.
We've often discussed when things are brought to the screen, what gets cut out, what characters or plot lines can be in some fashion removed without losing the storyline, what would just make for bad screen time if it was adapted to the film. And in this case, we have the stereotypical setup, the magical realm, and then all of this is immediately turned sideways. And I don't know what that looks like in the film. I have not seen the movie, but for a reader, this is very exciting.
Great.
We don't need just another fairy tale where we know what's happening, bad witch, find the mirror, kiss the prince, everyone happy, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Uh, Jones does not stick to many of the tropes we come to expect, but still builds a world with the familiarity needed where you can track along. There's a lot of assumed content, which I love from a writer. The show Don't Tell,
Yep.
this book would be 4 times as long if she had to spell out everything. So really
Right.
leaning on that, the knowledge of the reader. But because of that, because it truly can be assumed, and there are many things that we can just, cool, bad witch, go do this. You don't need a Genesis story. You don't need a full outline. We have the presumptions that we can make. And she twists those presumptions later. We get both. We have our cake and we can eat it too. And the end result is she can build what would otherwise be a fairly mind-boggling, twisting, winding plot,
Mm-hmm.
which is both fantastic to read, a departure from the fairy tales that are already overdone.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me see if that's this opening for the artistic freedom for what people could turn into a movie. So really, I mean, I have no idea if that was her intention, published in 86, if that was even a thought in her mind. But clearly, as we can see from now times, worked out quite well for both of
Yeah.
them.
You're right.
The plot itself, I don't want to dive in too deep because honestly, a lot of details that I could share with you would bring up more questions than it would give answers.
Yeah.
I think you texted me the other day. What did you say? It's known to be a fairly dense text. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah. And it's dense in a both confusing and compelling way.
Okay.
Because that's 100% correct. It is not just a fairy tale. You can flip the pages, you can move along. There's a lot happening, but everything that is, again, a departure from the plot lines that you expect is a unique addition rather than complexity for the sake of complexity.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the best way. I don't feel great about that description, but it's the best way I can come up with to describe it. Virtually every fork in these roads that we have, based on the initial fairy tale setup, what Jones plays off of is the expectation of what should, quote unquote, should happen in a fairy tale realm in this world that she set up. And it feels like she basically flipped a coin and chose to follow sometimes the expected path, because if we strayed at every turn, this would no longer be recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ones where she does stray, it is so far outside of what you would expect in a fairy tale that you could not see it coming. So we have
Right.
these, I mean, not thrills, it's not approaching a thriller, but the okay, magic door, turn it one way, this opens to the king's palace, turn it one way, it opens out to the field. Yeah, we can see that. This would fit. You could drop this into King Arthur, it would fit. You could drop this into Lord of the Rings, and it would fit. Sleeping Beauty, any insert fairy tale here, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then One Direction, he turns the door handle. Suddenly they're in a backyard in Wales, and his sister is telling him how he's making poor life decisions, but his niece and nephew love seeing their cool uncle. What?
Wow.
Why?
Yeah.
Who? Why? Everything. Just fantastic. And again, there are 1,000 of these little tidbits throughout. We have the familiar an angry witch feels slighted, so she turns this young, beautiful girl into an old, haggard woman who keeps running across these magical objects. There are
Yeah.
foreboding prophecies, and then the guy is going to be late for saving the prince and helping the kingdom because his Welsh rugby club is having a reunion at the pub. You're you're just it's in ways that are novel and unique enough. I will say it doesn't 100% gel for me,
Sure.
but I see why so many people read it, why so many people love it. Because if nothing else, especially if you are an avid reader, this is something new and fresh without resorting to what I think is the crude club someone like George R.R. Martin wields, which is, oh, I'll build a fun fantasy realm, but with a lot of sex and murder. Like,
Right. Yeah.
we can be more clever than this.
Yeah. Totally.
And I think she does that beautifully, which is where the ambiguity to me comes in. Is this a children's book? Is it not? It wouldn't be the first thing I would reach for, but I could see reading this with my 12-year-old nephew and both of us enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a remarkable knife's edge to walk. And I think she does it brilliantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, a lot of the plot skipped, mostly because I presume if you're listening to this, either you've read or watched it already, or if this is enough encouragement for you to do it, these are all fun little Easter eggs for you to discover for yourself. So it's not like
Yeah.
avoiding spoilers, much like any fairy tale. Kind of not. I mean, you know how fairy tales end, right?
Right. Yep.
So the value in this one is very, very much the journey and not the destination. Yeah, I really struggled with what I could or should share, and I'm very curious what parts they did decide to bring over to the movie, but I kinda
Yeah.
wanna hear that from your side and compare
Yeah.
rather than give, because you cannot give a synopsis of this book plot. It's a weird pockmarked road that
Yeah.
does not lead anywhere you thought it would, perhaps doesn't lead anywhere at all.
Yeah. Well, and I would say something similar about the movie. The movie quite famously deviates from the book. So it's still,
Oh,
got all of these sort of confusing subversions, not confusing, but I don't know another word, subversive subversions of the fairy tale genre. So kind of interesting to hear you
yes.
say that about the book as well. So maybe he did a really good job of adapting, of
Yeah,
really
interesting.
understanding sort of what's at the core of the text.
Okay.
So I kind of had a hard time putting together notes for this one because a lot of what I and other people have to say about this movie and its history are sort of cyclical. You can't really talk about anime without talking about Studio Ghibli, and you can't really talk about Studio Ghibli without talking about Hayao Miyazaki, and you can't really talk about uh,
Mhm.
Hayao Miyazaki without talking about you know filmmaking and sort of walking this razor's edge between children and adult storytelling, family storytelling. So you'll have to forgive me as I jump around and like pinball around here a little bit. But the film adaptation of Howl's Moving Castle was released in 2004 and was directed by this guy, Hayao Miyazaki, that I've mentioned several times. He is one of the founders of Studio Ghibli, which is a huge, huge, huge animation company in Japan, and is pretty much responsible for the biggest anime, at least film titles. I don't know how involved they are in television, but if you know an anime film, chances are it's a Studio Ghibli movie, unless you're. We've got a couple of friends that are like really big anime heads, so they probably know a few other studios. But on my behalf, at least, if I know an anime film, like 99% of the time, it's going to be a Studio Ghibli film. And this one, Howl's Moving Castle, is considered one of the studio's crowning achievements, actually. So that's kind of a big deal
Okay.
considering how massively popular anime is around the world. And then, kind of an extra fun fact, the movie was distributed by Toho, which is another huge studio in Japan, which is very widely known for owning the rights to Godzilla. That's the studio that's kind of responsible
Oh,
for most Godzilla content worldwide. So, really, just all of that is to say that this is a product of huge, huge, just like juggernauts of Japanese culture.
can you tell me what does that mean if Studio Ghibli is so massive, why is a different studio distributing the film? I don't
Sometimes
understand that.
studios collaborate like that to split costs and,
Okay.
frankly, share profits. This movie made a boatload of money, so it's possible. I don't know the workings, the inner workings of Toho and Ghibli. Maybe they collaborate frequently. Maybe one of them owns another. I'm not totally positive on that because how that
Okay.
industry is set up is just so different than the industry here in America. So it was just a way of spreading the love a little bit, I think. And by love, I mean money. Miyazaki read the book like you did and was immediately grabbed by this image of the moving castle and trying to figure out how to turn that into an actual, physical image. Like you said, that's
Mhm.
that's sort of the biggest like what the hell moment of the story, right? And that's what actually led to the development of the movie. He was so interested in like, how would I draw this castle? How would I make it move? How would I make it believable in a film? And of course, he, as an anime filmmaker, has some kind of extra leeway, maybe, because those are usually fantasy films, and this is a fantasy story. So you get to kind of do some silly things, and eventually he landed. I don't know. Have you seen a poster or a clip from this movie or anything? Have you seen what the castle looks like? It's a massive, big, ugly, uneven dump of a castle that walks around on chicken legs, these little spindly mechanical chicken legs.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So kind of
So
just
that's
interesting.
exactly what I was picturing, and that
Really?
is not what's described in the book, and I've,
Yeah,
like, taken a liberty with myself. I don't know why.
that's funny.
I need
Maybe you've
to
seen it and
see a
didn't
picture
like
of this.
realize, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or maybe you're on the same wavelength as Hayao Miyazaki. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, yep. This looks like a beetle that haunts my dreams.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Interesting. Film adaptation was heavily influenced by Miyazaki's opposition to war in general, but particularly America's invasion of Iraq in 2003. And he set out
Mm,
to make a film that would sort of be alienating to American audiences because it lampoons, not lampoons, but it really is a takedown of this idea that like war and victory in war are not as glorious as we've been like sort of propagandized to believe, you know?
mhm, mhm.
And it's an extra interesting perspective because Miyazaki is born into a family that actually made, I think, a modest fortune, at least, on manufacturing plane parts during World War II. And then he grew up as a pacifist. So, very interesting. All of his films
Huh.
have contained messaging often about, you know, anti-war, anti-capitalism, pro-environmentalism. He's a very, very political filmmaker, and this film very much fits into that.
So this wasn't necessarily he saw that in the storyline naturally and thought he could bring it out. This is something he's reflecting onto his work.
Yeah, somewhere between those two things, because the substantial differences from the book include that the movie takes place during war time, which I believe the book is kind of just operating under the threat of war, right? Like there's a sort of
Yeah, yeah,
looming
yeah,
war.
the prince. Yeah, that's why they're trying to get back. I wanna say Balthazar, and that's wrong. The 2 missing dudes, that's kind of the compelling factor to Howl going and helping find the prince and the missing wizard, because it's not just the king's brother, but, like, his greatest general, and there's this looming threat that they'll be attacked and they need him back in time.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, so
Is
this
that Does that line up at all?
not really.
Huh.
We're at
Okay.
war and I'm trying to yeah, I'm trying to think. One of the reasons that this matches so well with anime is because of that sort of quality you talked about where you're dropped into the story. There's really not much exposition. That's a pretty common trend, at least as far as I know, in anime. I'm usually spending most of the time in anime movies trying to catch up to the lore and the
Yes.
story and the world, and that's the case here. So I am a little foggy on why they were at war. It had to do with there was a missing prince.
Mhm.
Um, maybe the other, maybe they thought he was kidnapped. I can't straighten out my thoughts without giving away too much. But it's during wartime, and Howl is a wizard who is supposed to be fighting on behalf of the king of whatever kingdom he lives in, but he actually spends his time kind of roaming the kingdoms and interfering, I guess, in battles, right? He doesn't really think that there's a good side or a bad side, so he's kind of just trying to stop the war altogether.
What?
Yeah. Because
So
so
there's no subplot of Wizard Howl chasing ladies.
no, it's sort of implied that he's a womanizer, but his romance with Sophie, the main character, is really sort of the driving force of the whole movie.
Alright, no comment, continue.
Okay.
This is bonkers.
Yeah. On along those lines, several characters are sort of compressed and combined, which is why I'm saying that like I couldn't really sort things out verbally without spoiling things because I
Yep.
this prince that's missing throughout the whole thing has a larger presence than you ever realized because of the way that they sort of rewrote some of these characters. I think the king got sort of compressed as well. I looked up a list a while ago and you know, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings. It's like I can't really read this list because I
Yeah,
haven't read the
yeah.
book, so I don't.
Yeah.
really want to sit here and like preach like I do know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I don't know how they would compress. The king is not a. Okay. Continue.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
the movie, for the most part, follows this young woman, Sophie, who's cursed by an evil witch and transformed into an old lady. And she goes to seek help from Howl, a wizard that she encountered once sort of by chance. And then she ends up joining his resistance movement as they fall in love, is sort of the plot of the movie,
Okay.
if I could
Yeah.
boil it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, we're tracking.
Diane Wynne Jones was not very involved with the production of the movie beyond meeting with Studio Ghibli a handful of times at the beginning of the process, which is obviously standard. There's like legal contracts and things involved.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
she has said, I wonder if if the quote is from the same essay that you mentioned, because I had a really hard time finding the like original source of the quote. There was just kind of a lot of articles that quoted this quote of hers where
Yes.
she called the movie fantastic and said that the differences between the movie and the book were necessary and very much natural when transferring
Interesting.
media, which I
Uh-huh.
was really happy to hear, because that's, we've talked about several times just this year how the art of adaptation is kind of its own thing and deserves,
Yes.
sort of lighter boundaries than most people are willing to give it.
Yep. Yep.
The movie went on to become a huge, huge hit in Japan and was eventually dubbed under the supervision of Pixar and released here in the US in 2000. So there's some really big stars, some like old Hollywood, like Lauren Bacall plays the evil witch, and Christian Bale plays Howl. So there's some really
I
big
saw
names.
that.
Billy Crystal plays the talking fire, and the name is
Calcifer?
escaping me. Yes, Calcifer. Yeah,
Yes.
and he's so
Those
good.
are phenomenal role choices.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
obviously, like I've mentioned, the movie's a big critical success as well. Many people have praised its ability to convey these nuanced ideas in a way that's easy for children and families to digest. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think that's mostly true. It's still, like I said, it's still sort of a lot of big ideas that are posed through symbolism and sort of the subversion of fantasy tropes. So sometimes if you're like thinking about it a little bit too hard, you can kind of like think yourself in knots and circles, and uh, it's can be kind of difficult to digest, but for the most part it is a very digestible story.
It kind of feels like, I mean, tell me if the tracking with the movie was like this to you. You remember that kinetic putty where like
Yeah.
the more force you put into it, the more solid it becomes, but
Oh
then if
yeah.
you loosen your grip, it falls through?
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah.
Because I had the exact same experience that you just described. If I kind of squint a little, don't look too
Yeah.
close, it
Yeah.
feels like it's flowing.
Right.
And then upon scrutiny, it feels like it kind of evaporates.
Yeah, and I think some of that, I have a hard time evaluating anime films just because they are so inherently from a different culture, just like any
Hmm.
foreign language film. Sometimes you have to be like, I don't know what's going on, and that's because I'm not Danish or whatever, or
Hmm.
Japanese in
Hmm.
this case.
We're
And I
we're just
didn't
gonna ride this wave.
Right. And I didn't grow up with anime like a lot of people did. I've got a good buddy, Cody, that probably knows and loves this movie and has watched anime his whole life and is just able to tap into that more than I am. And our buddy JD as well really likes anime, and I don't dislike it. I just feel like I kind of missed, sort of like, again, Lord of the Rings. Feel like I sort of missed the boat getting into it at
Hmm.
the right age,
Hmm.
and sometimes that makes it a little
Yep.
harder to consume, you know.
Yep. Yep.
Uh like all Ghibli movies and Miyazaki movies, praised for its animation and its nuanced storytelling, like I mentioned, and was ultimately nominated for Best Animated Features at the Oscars, but lost. I just think this is so funny because of what Howl's Moving Castle is as a film. It lost to Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were Rabbit, which which is a great movie. I love those Aardman movies. I just think it's so funny that this anti-war piece came out and lost to a movie about a
Just
were
some
rabbit.
claymation.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of the movie. Just
Woof.
really beloved stuff there. But tell me, what kind of discussion questions do you have?
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
So, as I alluded to earlier, there are so many options for how this story in particular could be manipulated or dissected to create a film, because you
Hmm.
clearly cannot include everything, especially this. Exactly what you talked about, the number of ideas that in the writing as well, and I presume that's why in the movie she does a fantastic job of giving this nuanced kind of summation of what would always or otherwise be a difficult topic to discuss, especially a children's story. But there are so many of them, so many of them. Do you think studios are taking that flexibility into consideration, or kind of chicken and the egg other way around? Are they looking for purely fun, good plot, and the flexibility, the hard choices will come later?
Depends probably on the country that you're talking about.
Mm,
If it's a country
fair.
like Japan that produces a lot of movies like this, where Studio Ghibli lives, they're probably looking for ways that they can exercise that flexibility.
Okay.
American studios are a lot more risk averse, so they will be looking for something that has this sort of checklist of things that will make it successful, which includes, unfortunately, like the plot of a movie that you can understand while you're also playing Candy Crush. So
Uh-huh.
I hate to sound so bleak, but that's kind of how they do it here in America, and the
Okay.
flexibility. This is I'm dancing around a certain idea, which is that in the last 5 or 6 years, especially animation studios have decided to pull away from any kind of messaging in their films here in America because there's this huge anti woke movement in America, and Trump was elected by popular vote this time, so that these studios read that and think, well, fine, nobody wants black characters or gay characters in movies anymore,
Mm,
so we're going to stop putting that in, and that's just a misread, obviously, of culture. And I was trying to avoid getting political, but here we are.
no, that I mean, especially an animated studio. So what you're talking about, I want to check my understanding here. So this risk aversion is, if we're going to put this much money in, we do not want the baggage of a potential that plot's too difficult, so it flops commercially. Am I
Yes.
understanding that correctly?
Yeah, exactly.
That sucks.
Anyways,
Interesting.
yeah. Okay, I was kind of curious, having read the book. I know that I told you beforehand that it was an anime film, and that was kind of one of the reasons we wanted to do it, was to explore a different sort of medium or genre. But is anime the medium that you would have expected for this? Because it's really fascinating to me that this is a British book, and really its only
Mhm.
adaptation has been this Japanese movie.
Hmm. I know that feels very surprising to me, especially with the lineage that they have there. I
Yeah.
mean, whoever produced it was willing to make just a comical farce of CGI for that early Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that I know we haven't discussed yet. I'm surprised they didn't want to tap into some of these huge names. I mean, how cool could the cast have been? This young, kind of brash wizard. They have 1,000 options.
Yeah.
The old spited haggard witch, 1,000 cool options
Yeah.
that we've seen, historically in the Lord of the Rings films, in the James Bond films.
Hmm.
They clearly could have done it,
Yeah.
and it would have been fantastic. So I am very curious why this is the direction they went. And I don't know if that's a choice they would have asked Jones about. Is this just who bought the rights?
I think it's just who bought the rights, and then because I mean, like I said, Hayao read the book, Miyazaki read the book,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just fell in love with developing these ideas, and that turned into the development of a movie. So I guess I don't know. I mean, how this is avoided that like reboot treatment, I don't really know, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad for it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I hope the rights are locked away in a locker at the bottom of the ocean off the coast of Japan somewhere, and it never gets touched. You
There,
know?
there's so many. I know you know what I'm talking about. That guy, he was nuts. He was a young wizard. He's in the Jackal now. I don't know if you've watched that.
Oh, Eddie Redmayne. Yeah,
How great would he be for Wizard Howl?
yeah, he'd be good.
The old witch that first curses Sophie. I'm picturing like Dame Judi Dench. Like, come on,
Yeah, yeah, that'd be cool.
come on. I think it could be done very well in a way. I don't know. I shouldn't say this. I haven't watched the anime yet. I'm sure I'm gonna love it. But to answer your question, no, it feels very curious.
Yeah,
And maybe that's the point.
yeah. I mean, she was totally okay with it, like I said. So interesting.
Yeah, 2007, and that was only 4 years before she passed, which from
2000.
the other authors we've discussed, that's when they start pulling all
Yeah,
punches and being brutally honest with their reviews. So
that's
I think we
true.
can trust this one.
That's true. That's true. Okay, what else do you got?
Yep, yep, yep. So this one I thought about constantly throughout, and it's so funny to me that this is the title, that it's really coming up as an important question, and we've touched on it a couple of times already.
Yeah,
But what came to mind for me in regards to these like tropes and stories and what keeps them fresh and exciting for an audience at these clearly pivotal decision points, tense interpersonal interactions, grand plan is coming to fruition and they have to finally go put it into action. As these points are clearly approaching, especially in a film for you, do you like to try to guess the outcome, or do you sit back and just wait to be surprised by whatever comes?
I try to sit back and be surprised. I think it's more fun if you just
Okay.
let whatever the story is, whether it's something like this, or I think maybe we kind of touched on this in the Agatha Christie episode too. I kind of,
Yes.
I think I have more fun if I'm not doing mental gymnastics the whole time, trying to pretend like a master detective or or a master
Yes.
fantasy
Yes. Yes.
storyteller or whatever. It's really tough as somebody who loves storytelling, loves writing. It's tough to not sort of play those games,
Yep.
but I really try to just let it wash over me and like enjoy the roller coaster ride.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to ask you, because I
Yeah,
suspected something. And you're right, it did come up with Agatha Christie, but those, I mean, it's literally the genre mystery.
right. Yeah.
Who done it? There
Hmm.
is a question inherent and implied, where this very easily could have included very few of these forks in the road questions,
Yeah.
and she deliberately baked it in a lot. Again, I know we're trying not to spoil some of those parts, but there are some turns here that, at least for me, were kind of like whiplash. Like, he
Yeah.
did what?
Yeah. I would totally agree with
That
that.
was what character hiding? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I
like
know
a
what you're talking
lot.
about. Yeah. Okay. This one you've kind of touched on already, but what other fantasy worlds, as you were reading this, did this feel comparable to? And I ask this because usually Studio Ghibli films, to me, can kind of only fit into their own world. You know, we sort of like,
Mm,
for example, we've talked a little bit about the shared lineage between Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and how you could sort of conceivably pick up one character from those movies and drop them into another and it would kind of work, right? Like it would kind of make sense. As a Tolkien
It's a
purist, I
horrible
know
crime
you're.
you've just committed,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I'm
okay,
just saying,
continue.
like, Gandalf fits in at Hogwarts.
Nope, don't just say it though. That is what you're just saying, but don't. Okay.
So I was curious if this world felt like any others to you as you were reading it, since the book is not intended to be anime and isn't, like held up by those sort of Studio Ghibli pillars that I saw it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The So the world building is quite curious here. As you already mentioned, we are just dropped in. There's no surprise.
Yeah.
Suddenly this guy has magic powers. There's just the expected, oh yeah, that's the wizard. Oh yeah, you're going to train with the witch. That's what you're going to become. Cool. While you continue being a hatter and making hats because that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. The expected, just no, treat it like normal, move on with the world. The comparison that I drew, I guess, I don't know if this will entirely answer your question, but I already wrote it out, so I'll just say it. It was part of my recommendations. There is a clear through line and lineage that I can see that I think is logically drawn out from Jones' writing. Again, just in this book. I'm not familiar with her other books yet. Where I could see like the form of storytelling and how you develop as a reader in particular,
Mm-hmm.
going from something like the Rick Riordan.
Oh, Percy Jackson.
Yes, the Percy Jackson books, where it's not it's not a Tolstoy level of character observation development that would turn off a young reader.
Right. Yeah.
It kind of enough, and the world building is almost supplementing to
Mm-hmm.
keep you interested.
Yeah.
Where I would say that maybe into Narnia. I guess I don't know what order I would put it with Narnia in terms of the bigger themes, but moving into this, where it is the same level of the world is not crazy.
Yeah.
You're not having to chew on it to understand, and neither are the characters, which as a not child or young adult reading, I would love a little bit more, but I kind of see why she did it. And I see that pretty naturally transitioning into some of Neil Gaiman's writing, and I suppose Pratchett too, where I could see like you go from Percy Jackson to Howl's Moving Castle to American Gods and are introduced to the ideas of how these themes swirl together,
Okay.
almost learning how to digest those worlds. To her credit, the way that she writes takes what should be the most this world building should fit most akin to like Arthurian Camelot Canterbury Tales.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But then also he goes and meets his nephew's English teacher and goes to his rugby club reunion and then pops back in real quick. There's just enough of these hints
Yeah.
that you don't have to have this super complex reading level ability to keep up with, that I think would very naturally weave into some of those other fantasy tales.
Yeah.
Which is to say, to your question, I think the world building becomes a necessary, not in a bad way, but a crutch to explore in a palatable manner some more useful, more interesting themes.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are some good comps. I was struggling to come up with any that were not Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. Cool. Well, how about recommendations? If anybody, who do you recommend this to?
Yeah, that's tough. I don't know that there's a single adult reader that I would say this is going to be your new favorite fantasy book.
Sure.
In my mind, this is firmly a YA. Like I have many students that I would and probably will recommend it to.
Okay.
I would see this as a jumping off point into, oh, you say you don't like reading? Let's explore some of these realms outside of maybe what you've been exposed to and see if that does something for you.
Yeah. Cool.
And like I said, I can see sort of that linear path. I've got tons of students that love the Rick Riordan books. I could see this being a very logical next step into the high fantasy realm that maybe hasn't been experienced. But if fantasy is already something you like right now, I think this would feel like a step back in a confusing way and
Okay.
maybe not amusing.
Sure. Okay.
I don't know, which I feel bad about saying because it really is a good book and uses some cool writing devices. I don't know. It's kind of a genre of its own.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat actually because
Okay.
anime, especially here in America, is such a black licorice for so many people. Like either you love it or you
Mm,
hate it. And
mhm.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that I love it, but I think I've sort of found a way for me to catch the wave and understand, like, appreciate these movies and often walk away with positive feelings. But I'm almost never gobsmacked the way a lot of people are. And
Uh-huh.
that's just to say that, I think it's rare that I'm sort of in the middle of that love it or hate it spectrum. So I kind of feel like my recommendation is if you like anime, you'll like this movie, which feels like sort of a dumb thing to like
Mm.
have on a
No, I see.
podcast, you know what I mean? But I don't know. I'm not really going to recommend it to people that I know don't engage with anime that often because that's sort of the number one hurdle, I guess I would say. Although I don't love the implications of that word, but for some people, it truly is a hurdle. So I don't I don't have a great like net to cast for this one. Maybe if you're a fan of fantasy storytelling, but I also know that there's a lot of stuff out there. You ran through like five or six that are heavily influenced by or did influence this text. So there's other options, I guess, if anime is not your thing.
Mhm.
What about would you rate it?
Well, what did you rate it? No, too late. I asked first.
Okay, I gave it 3.5 stars. Obviously, I love the messaging. I think there's a lot to appreciate. Like I was just saying, there's so many ideas in this movie being presented at all times, and like I said, a lot of them are through symbolism, and some of it's tied to mythologies and other sort of storytelling, like historical perspectives that I just am
Mm,
not in touch with because I'm not Hayao Miyazaki, and that it sort of can be a hurdle. I know I just said I don't like that word, but I don't know how else to describe it. But that being said, it's beautiful animation. I thought the character design, the way that the characters are drawn, was so cool and so poignant to each of the characters.
yep.
And they're able to do some really cool things too. Like Sophie's, she's turned into an old lady, but her age sort of wobbles back and forth based on how in love with
Mm.
Howl she is. And that's something that, I thought was just like really,
Yeah.
really masterful and, something I didn't even catch on to until the end of the movie. I was like, why does she look like a kid again with but she's got gray hair. And then I was
Mhm.
like, oh
Mhm.
yeah. So there's just so much
Yeah.
going on that I can't really give it the super high rating on my first viewing because I just couldn't digest it all. But it is good. So 3.5 is where I landed.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
How about you?
Honestly, along the same lines, I feel ashamed of this, but it is a firm 3.
Okay.
I see why so many people loved it, and again, based on the analysis and further discussion that I've gone and sought out since reading it, I'm tempted to bump it up, but the text itself is what I'm trying to rate here,
Mhm.
and this is not saying it's a bad text, it's saying it falls outside of my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
the the fantasy aspect is, again, all of these choices she made seem very understandable and reasonable, but for me, the fantasy aspect is, like, not really that otherworldly, it's a little downplayed,
Mm,
and the human interaction also falls a little bit flat
okay.
because of the amount of plot
Yeah. Yeah.
being fit in here, and it's not like it's a short book. I didn't even check the total. I mean, 329 pages. She wasn't trying to be brief.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like each category gets to 3 out of 5 and
Yeah.
just not quite past it.
Yeah.
I think 20 years ago, this would maybe be a very different answer,
Oh, okay.
but for today and now, the different aspects that I could see seeking in this text, we simply have more appealing options that I think I would reach for first.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm in the similar boat. Cool.
Which again, it feels bad to say because it's not a bad book.
Right. I know when I rated it on Letterboxd, I obviously looked at all the people that I follow and some of the, reviews and stuff. And it means so much to so many people. And so it's,
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of a weird one for the podcast because we kind of neither of us have a very good, recommendation, like group of people to
Mm-hmm.
recommend this to. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that at least and it sounds like you as well, kind of understand well enough why people love it that we we feel bad saying that we didn't, but we don't want that
Yes.
to influence any opinions of listeners. If you think you're going to like it, you're probably going to like it.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I know that there are people that would absolutely adore this, and I'm sure I will run into, again, maybe a student, maybe a fellow reader, that something clicks and I say, "Wait a minute, this could be for you."
Yeah.
And I hope that they love it.
Yeah.
There's a difference between quality writing, quality craft, and the simple fact that not everything is made for everyone.
Yeah. Exactly. Which is the point of adaptation.
Yes. I see what you did there.
Yes. Thank you all for joining us for our conversation about Hayao Miyazaki's and Diane Wynne Jones' Howl's Moving Castle. Next up, we have a very special surprise episode that we're actually not going to reveal here because it involves some of our listeners that we are trying to catch off guard. So stick around. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have a few guests. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to next time.
Bye.
That's the show for today. Thanks for tuning in. Let us know in the comments what you're reading, what you're watching, and what adaptations you'd like us to cover. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at adaptation_pod and on Twitter at adaptpod. See you next time.